Johnny, how are we doing today, my friend?
I'm very good. How are you two?
Yeah, all good, mate. The sun is shining here in London. Premier League football is back, and it's time to finally give your team a beating for once. For once, how are you feeling coming into the game?
It's good. I think. To be honest, I think it's been a very, very long international break. I don't mind them occasionally, but oh my god, I think this one's just dragged and dragged and dragged. But look, I'm really looking forward to the game. I think Newcastle go in there full of confidence, like you've mentioned just at the top of the show. Spurs and Newcastle always seems to be an entertaining game, and we've been doing okay at Tottenham in the last few years. But yeah, Eddie Howe has transformed us and made it very difficult to beat. So I think it'll be a tough game for Tottenham on Sunday as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very difficult game. Obviously, since you've had that massive injection of cash, there's been a lot of talk about Newcastle, what direction they're going in. There are people saying in a relegation battle, but Eddie Howe's gone on a 9-game unbeaten run to kind of calm those fears down. But how have you found the newfound riches so far?
It's weird. It's very weird. No, I don't think it's really hit any Newcastle fan yet. I think obviously we've had a couple of big name signings. Obviously, Kieran Trippier, former Tottenham player, did very well for the Spurs a few years ago, and Bruno Guimaraes, which I'm sure we'll mention a little bit later on. It is very strange. It is very, very strange. I think if Newcastle do stay up, I do think they will stay up, and if they do, the summer could be even crazier on Tyneside. But I'm enjoying it. I have to be honest. I'm enjoying it. I'd just like to see us out this relegation battle rather, and not have to talk about or fear about relegation and move up the table, because I think Newcastle can. I think they've got everything in us in terms of the players that we're trying to bring in terms of the manager seems to be doing well with the players that he's got at his disposal now. He's got better players potentially can move up the table as well. So everything's swimming along nicely in Tyneside. You know, it's really, really good. Everyone's got a smile on their face when you talk about Newcastle United. It wasn't necessarily the case even a year ago, to be honest.
Yeah, and I could see like all the smiles on Tyneside. I mean, me and Sim were just in Dublin over the weekend, and walking down the strip where I was on my stag do, and there were loads of different stag do's there, and we saw one where there was a group of about 10 lads. One of them was wearing like a big Sheikh outfit, and behind them was about 9 lads all wearing Newcastle strips, and they were all having a brilliant time, and that kind of encapsulated the kind of vibe coming out of Tyneside at the moment. But when you're looking at Spurs, obviously it's been a very Jekyll and Hyde season for Spurs so far, but how do you kind of assess, from an outsider looking in, how are you looking at Spurs at the moment?
What a coup getting Antonio Conte, by the way. That's probably the best signing, if you want to call it a signing, this season, I think, because Nuno came in. I think a lot of Spurs fans were unimpressed with that decision to bring in Nuno. And as soon as Antonio Conte had his couple of months break and was ready to come back into football, Spurs pounced on him. And you look at how well he's done so far. I think if it was any other manager, I don't think Spurs would really be in this battle. They've managed to get a fantastic partnership with Son and Kane, which they've always had, but he's even managed to improve that now. And if you've got Harry Kane and Son doing so well, you're going to be near the top of the table or near the top 4 contention for sure, because they're so good. For Tottenham, I think at the minute they're not favourites for the top 4, but I think they will finish in the top 4 because of the 2 players that were mentioned, and they've got the best manager out of the 3 teams that are really contesting it. I think Chelsea are too far away. I don't think West Ham Wolves are good enough for the top 4. So if you look at the other 2 managers, Ralph Rangnick and Mikel Arteta, I just think he's streets ahead. He's streets ahead tactically, and I think that game against Arsenal, whenever it gets rescheduled, whenever Arsenal decide that they want to actually play Tottenham this time, I think that will be huge.
Johnny, obviously, we mentioned it before about Eddie Howe was on an unbeaten run, but you have lost the last 2 games, only by 1-0. Do you think momentum is slowing down a bit, or do you feel like it's just 2 tough games and you're still, going the right direction in terms of performances?
Well, you mentioned 2 very different games. Everton, of course, trying to get points to stay in the division. I just think we were. What's the word? I just think we were a bit blunt going forward. I think it was just one of those games we just never looked like scoring. And Everton took their chance right at the end, and that can happen. I think with the fact that Everton was so desperate, they were willing to take chances. I think the most disappointing aspect of that game was the fact that Everton were down to 10 men and we didn't capitalise. And I think you've got to have that killer instinct, really. And Newcastle, at that point, didn't show it. The Chelsea game, that little bit of magic can happen when you play one of the top teams. that ball by Jorginho in the touch and finish from Havertz, that can happen. So
and you were robbed of a penalty, weren't you, in that game, weren't you?
Robbed of a penalty. Havertz probably shouldn't have been on the pitch as well. So it all adds up. But I'm not concerned. I think Eddie Howe is certainly the right man. He's certainly transformed Newcastle. And yes, he has had money to spend. But you look at the players we brought in. Matt Targett, Aston Villa. He's been so consistent for Newcastle. Nothing less than a 7 out of 10 since he's been in. Dan Burn's been good since he's come in. Bruno's scored a fantastic goal. Chris Wood, it's taken a little bit longer for him to settle, but we have that focal point now. So, yeah, I'm very optimistic under Eddie Howe.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Chris Wood, because when you made that signing in January, I thought it was a very clever piece of business from Newcastle. Not only were you getting a striker who gets, at least 15 Premier League goals a season, but you were also taking one away from Burnley, who at the time you were very close to in the league. But what's gone on with him, and why has he taken a bit longer than the others to settle in?
That's a good question. Really, really good question. Again, I agree. I think it was a very good bit of business. You strengthen yourself and you de-strengthen an opposition for relegation. He's only scored the 1 goal, but he has struggled to find the back of the net. And he had a couple of opportunities in the first couple of games that he played for Newcastle. And I think if he had got a goal earlier on, I think he might have got maybe 3 or 4 goals by now, and it wouldn't look as bad. But I suppose it's like any striker, you need a bit of form, and he has scored for New Zealand. I know it's New Zealand, I know it's internationals, but he has scored, I think, 4 goals for New Zealand in the last 10 days. So he might come into that game against Tottenham with a bit of confidence, and maybe he might be the difference. But I'm not disappointed with how he's done, because Newcastle have been winning games and he has contributed. So we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully he can pick up his form again on Sunday.
In hindsight, would you have preferred to go for maybe a Wout Weghorst, who's come into Burnley? I mean, first few games he's looked really good, but also he has flattered to deceive maybe in the past couple of weeks as well.
I think you can look at the two and obviously I think you can compare them both very, very similar. The only difference is Chris Wood is Premier League proven. He was 1 and 3 let's be honest, at average Burnley side. He was 1 and 2 at Leeds in the Championship. So you can kind of expect him to be 1 and 3 after being 1 and 2 in the Championship. So I think it was sensible to go for Chris Wood. I think it would probably been a bit more of a gamble to go for Weghorst. But look, I think they are both very similar. They've probably got the same amount of goals and will end up with the same amount of goals at the end of the season. I just hope that Weghorst isn't playing in the Premier League and Chris Wood is.
Yeah, and how, in terms of this Newcastle project, how quickly are you thinking it's going to move? Are you looking at top 6 next season, top 4 next season? Obviously, considering you do stay in the Premier League, as it looks like it will happen this season. What are Newcastle fans' expectations going into next season, do you think?
Stay in the league this season, for sure. Next season, I think it's going to be very, very...
You're safe, Johnny, you're safe.
You can say that. I'll say the Spurs are adamant to get top 4. They're guaranteed to get top 4. No, I think in terms of next season, if Newcastle do stay, which I do expect them to do, I think it depends on what we do business-wise in the summer. If Newcastle really want to go for it and spend £200 million, they can, because we haven't spent a lot under when we were owned by Mike Ashley. So there is that scale up where Newcastle can spend a lot of money and won't be penalised by financial fair play. I think there is a plan behind it. I don't know if it is to go and spend £200 million this summer, or to spend every transfer window and gradually build. And it might take, say, 3 to 5 years. But I would like to think that Newcastle, I think, top half would have to be realistic. Maybe the Conference League would be maybe what would be a good, realistic objective. But you've got to remember the Premier League now is just so competitive. It's ridiculously competitive. And Newcastle are going to find it even harder to try and break into the top 7, the top 8, rather than the top 4, the top 6, because like teams like West Ham and Wolves, Leicester have had the moments as well over the last few years. They're so difficult to beat. They really, really are. And like, I think now you've got to be either Man City or Liverpool, pretty much winning every week to guarantee being in the top 4. It's that crazy now. So I walk before we run for Newcastle, but I do think that Newcastle will be competing for top 4 honours within the next 5 years if they do it right.
Wow. So obviously big game this weekend. Newcastle coming over to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. How do you see the game going?
I think Newcastle can get something from the game. I think it just depends if we go 4 or 5 at the back. Fabian Schär's fit, according to Eddie Howe. So I would imagine... I wouldn't be surprised if Newcastle go 5 at the back. I personally would rather go 4 at the back and see how we get on. But I think if we go 5 at the back, I think both teams will try to look to counter-attack each other. I think Son and Kane have shown if they can get on the counter-attack, it normally ends in a goal. With Newcastle, if they get on the counter-attack, it's Alan St-Maximin. So he's very much a little jack in the box. You don't know exactly what you're going to get, but he has had a good season so far for Newcastle. So I think he is our key man. Ryan Fraser's shown a bit of form as well. So it's going to be tight, I think. But I think Newcastle can get something from the game if they can really contain Kane and Son, make it really, really difficult. I know you've mentioned Kulusevski on our channel. He's been a revelation since he's come to Tottenham, and it's going to be difficult to keep all three of them quiet, but we need to try and frustrate Tottenham as much as we can. And
what areas of the pitch do you think the game's going to be lost and won?
I think midfield's going to be really, really important. Bruno Guimaraes, I think, will start for Newcastle. I think you can't drop him. I think you'll see. Newcastle fans are just starting to see he's just a level above what we've normally had. It's just whether it's going to be Bruno with Joe Linton, John Joe Shelby, Joe Willock, or Sean Longstaff. If I had to put money on it, I'd probably say it'll be Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, and Joe Willock. That's what I think it'll be, but don't be surprised to see John Joe Shelby in that midfield because he has been an ever-present since Eddie Howe's walked through the door.
Yeah, Joe Willock will be in for a tasty reception on
I'm
Sunday.
Sure
that's for sure. That's for sure. But finally, let's get your score prediction.
I'm going to go 1-1. I think Newcastle can frustrate Tottenham.